Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something tonight. You are not here by accident. I believe you were divinely appointed to be in this moment, to hear a message that can change your life. You see, the power of God is not some far-off concept. It is real, tangible, and available to each and every one of us. It's the kind of power that doesn't just touch the surface, it transforms from the inside out. But here's the deal: God's power doesn't just happen. It's not a sprinkle of fairy dust or some wishful thinking. No, it's activated through faith. Faith, my friends, is the key that unlocks the door. It's stepping out, even when you don't see the whole staircase, believing that God has already built it for you. Maybe you're sitting here tonight thinking, but you don't know my struggle. You don't know what I've been through, and you're right. I don't. But let me tell you about a man named Moses. Moses had a stutter. He had a past. He ran from his problems. But when God's power got a hold of him, that same man parted a sea. That same man led a nation to freedom. God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. And let me remind you, you are called. And let me tell you something else: God's power doesn't just fix your problems, it changes you. It changes how you see yourself, how you see your situation, and how you see your future. That mountain you've been staring at, it looks smaller when you realize the one standing with you is the one who made the mountains. You want peace? You want strength? You want to walk into your purpose with clarity? Stop trying to do it all on your own. Surrender. Let God's power take over. Because when you do, you're not just living, you're thriving. You're walking in victory. Look, I could stand here and talk all night about stories from the Bible, stories from today of people who were broken, lost, hopeless, and how God transformed their lives. But the most important story is yours. What are you going to do with it? God's power is not a myth, a theory, or a distant hope. It is the most real and transformative force in existence. It is the power that created the heavens and the earth, the power that spoke life into being, the power that parted seas, healed the sick, and raised the dead. This is the power we are talking about, a force beyond comprehension, yet intimate enough to touch the deepest parts of your life. It is constant, unchanging, and available, not just for the saints or the perfect, but for everyone, yes, even you. We live in a world obsessed with power. People chase after it through careers, wealth, influence, or status. They think if they can just achieve this level or obtain that thing, they'll have control, and with that control, they'll find happiness, peace, or purpose. But look around, how many of those people actually find what they're looking for? They reach the top only to realize they're still empty. That's because the kind of power the world offers is temporary. It fades, it disappoints, and ultimately it fails. But God's power is different. It's eternal, perfect, and fulfilling. It doesn't just add to your life, it transforms your life. Think about what it means to have access to the Creator of the universe, the one who set the stars in motion, who knows every hair on your head, who sees your tears and hears your prayers. That same God wants to pour His power into your life. He's not distant, He's close. He's not indifferent, He's invested. And His power is not about domination or control, it's about love. It's a power that lifts you up when you fall, and that strengthens you when you're weak, that gives you hope when everything seems lost. It's a power that doesn't just fix your circumstances, but reshapes your very soul. There's no limit to what God's power can do. It can heal broken relationships, restore shattered dreams, and breathe a new life into situations that seem dead. It can take your deepest pain and turn it into your greatest purpose. But here's the thing: God's power doesn't force itself on you. It's always there, always available, but it waits for you to open the door. It's like having $1 billion in the bank, but never withdrawing a single penny. The power is there, but you have to claim it, believe in it, and invite it into your life. Maybe you've been through things that make it hard to believe in a power greater than yourself. Maybe life has beaten you down so much that you've started to think, this is just the way it is, but let me tell you something: nothing is too big for God. No problem, No pain, no past is beyond his reach. He is the God who turns ashes into beauty, mourning into joy, and despair into hope. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead is available to you right now. You don't have to earn it, you just have to receive it. God's power isn't about your qualifications or your worthiness. It's about his grace. It's about his desire to see you live the life he created you for, a life of purpose, joy, and abundance. That doesn't mean life will be perfect or without challenges. What it means is that you will never face those challenges alone. His power will sustain you, guide you, and equip you to overcome. God's power is real. It's tangible. It's life-changing. And it's yours for the taking. The question is, are you ready to step into it? Because when you do, everything changes, not just your circumstances, but your perspective, your heart, and your destiny. God's power isn't just about what he can do. It's about who he is. And when you invite his power into your life, you're not just inviting change, you're inviting the very presence of God himself. That, my friend, is the ultimate transformation. Faith is the key that unlocks the transformative power of God. It is the bridge between what we hope for and what God has already promised. Faith is not just a passive belief or a vague hope that things will improve. It is an active, living trust in God's ability and willingness to move in your life. It's the spiritual force that connects you to the limitless power of the Creator. Without faith, God's power remains like an unopened gift full of potential but untouched. With faith, that power becomes active, alive, and unstoppable in your life. Faith isn't about seeing first. It's about believing first. In fact, faith often requires us to believe in the unseen, to trust in what we cannot yet grasp with our senses. That's hard for many of us because we like to be in control. We want to know the details, the steps, the outcomes. But faith says, trust God even when you can't see the whole picture. It's like standing at the edge of a cliff, not knowing how you'll cross, and then stepping forward because you trust that God will make a way. That's the kind of bold, unshakable faith that activates his power in your life. Faith doesn't mean you won't have doubts. Let's be real, doubt is a part of being human. Even some of the greatest figures in the Bible wrestled with doubt. Abraham doubted when God told him he would be the father of many nations. And Sarah laughed at the idea of having a child in her old age. Yet they chose to trust God anyway, and their faith unlocked miraculous blessings. Faith isn't the absence of doubt, it's choosing to trust God despite the doubt. It's saying, God, I don't have all the answers, but I trust that you do. Faith also requires action. It's not enough to just believe in your heart. Faith moves your feet. The Bible says faith without works is dead. That means true faith compels you to act in alignment with what you believe. If you believe God can heal, then you pray with expectation. If you believe God can provide, then you give generously even when it doesn't make sense. If you believe God has a purpose for your life, then you take steps toward that purpose, trusting that he will guide you along the way. Faith and action go hand in hand like two wings of a bird. Without both, you can't soar. Faith is also tested. It's easy to have faith when life is smooth, but real faith is forged in the fire of adversity. It's in those moments of uncertainty, struggle, and pain that faith grows. Think of it like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. When life knocks you down, faith says, get back up. God's not done yet when the world says it's impossible. Faith says, with God, all things are possible. The trials you face aren't there to break your faith. They're there to strengthen it and to prepare you for the blessings ahead. Faith is deeply personal, but it's also communal. Sometimes your faith will feel weak, and that's when the faith of others can carry you. Surround yourself with people who believe in God's power, who will encourage you, pray for you, and remind you of his promises. Faith is contagious, and being in an atmosphere of belief can ignite your own trust in God. Faith isn't a one-time decision, it's a daily choice. Every day you have the opportunity to trust God with your decisions, your fears, your dreams, and your challenges. It's not about having perfect faith, it's about having persistent faith. Even a mustard seed of faith can move mountains because it's not the size of your faith that matters, it's the size of your God. When you choose faith, you open the door for God to show up and show up and show up in ways you never imagined. His power is waiting to flow into your life, and faith is the channel that makes it happen. Life is full of obstacles, challenges, and moments that test us to our core. At times, it can feel as though the weight of the world is pressing down, making it impossible to move forward. But God's power has a way of turning the impossible into the possible. It doesn't merely help you survive your obstacles, it equips you to overcome them, to rise above them, and to come out stronger on the other side. This is not a theoretical idea or wishful thinking. It is a truth experienced by countless individuals who have placed their trust in God. His power is a force that defies logic and breaks through barriers, no matter how insurmountable they may seem. When you are faced with an obstacle, the first thing that often arises is fear. Fear of failure, fear of the unknown, fear that you aren't strong enough to handle what lies ahead. That fear can be paralyzing, but here's the thing about God's power: it doesn't operate in fear, it operates in faith. The Bible tells us that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. His power casts out fear, reminding you that you are not alone in the battle. When you lean into God, fear begins to lose its grip, and courage starts to rise within you. God's power doesn't just stop at removing fear, it goes further. It provides the tools you need to conquer whatever is standing in your way. Sometimes that power manifests as divine intervention, where circumstances shift in ways that only God could orchestrate. Other times it shows up as an inner strength, a quiet but unshakable resilience that keeps you moving forward when everything around you says to give up. Whether it's a financial struggle, a broken relationship, a health crisis, or a deep personal failure, God's power equips you to face it head on. It doesn't mean the journey will be easy, but it does mean you won't face it alone. One of the most remarkable aspects of God's power is that it often works through what seems like weakness. Think about David, a young shepherd boy with no armor and a slingshot, facing a giant that an entire army feared. By all accounts, David should have been defeated, but he wasn't fighting in his own strength, he was fighting in God's power. That same power is available to you. Your obstacles may look like giants, but with God, you have everything you need to overcome them. Another way God's power helps you overcome obstacles is by changing your perspective. When you're caught in the middle of a challenge, it's easy to focus on how big the problem is. But God's power shifts your focus from the size of your obstacle to the size of your God. Suddenly, what once seemed insurmountable becomes small in comparison to His greatness. This change in perspective doesn't just give you hope, it gives you the confidence to act, to step out in faith, and to trust that God is working all things together for your good. God's power also uses obstacles as opportunities for growth. Challenges are not just something to get through, they are often the very means by which God shapes you into who you are meant to be. Just as gold is refined in fire, your character, faith, and purpose are refined through the trials you face. When you allow God's power to work in your life, those obstacles that once seemed like roadblocks can become stepping stones to something greater. They teach you perseverance, deepen your trust in God, and prepare you for the blessings and responsibilities that lie ahead. And let's not forget, your victory over obstacles isn't just for you. It becomes a testimony, a beacon of hope for others who are struggling. When people see how God has brought you through, it inspires them to believe that He can do the same for them. God's power doesn't just transform your life, it has a ripple effect, touching the lives of those around you. So when you face obstacles, remember this: they are no match for God's power. His strength is made perfect in weakness, and His grace is sufficient for every challenge. With God, you are not just a survivor, you are more than a conqueror. His power will see you through, and when it does, you will look back and realize that what once seemed like a mountain was just a stepping stone to your destiny. Purpose is one of the most profound needs of the human heart. We all yearn to know why we are here, what we are meant to do, and where our lives are headed. Without purpose, life can feel like a series of disconnected events, a constant chase for fleeting moments of satisfaction that never truly fill the void. But here's the truth: God's power doesn't just help you navigate through life, it gives your life purpose and direction. His power doesn't merely guide you, it transforms you so that you can step fully into the plan He has designed specifically for you. God's purpose for your life isn't something vague or uncertain. It's as real as the air you breathe and the ground beneath your feet. He created you with a specific intention, a role that only you can fulfill. But discovering that purpose often requires more than just looking inward. It demands that you look upward. It's God's power that illuminates your path, showing you not just where you are, but where you're meant to go. His word is described as a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. And that light comes from His divine power working in and through us. One of the ways God's power reveals your purpose is by awakening gifts and talents you may not even realize you have. You see, God doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called. You may think you're unqualified or that your skills are insufficient, but God has already placed inside you everything you need to fulfill His purpose. His power activates those gifts, sharpening and refining them so that they can be used to impact others and glorify Him. It's not about what you can do on your own. It's about what God can do through you. God's power also gives clarity amid the noise. In today's world, it's easy to get distracted by competing voices, society's expectations, family pressures, or even your own doubts and insecurities. These distractions can pull you in 100 different directions, leaving you feeling lost and overwhelmed. But God's power cuts through the noise, providing a sense of focus and direction that the world cannot offer. When you surrender to His leading, you'll find that the confusion starts to fade and a sense of purpose begins to take root. Another incredible aspect of God's power is how it redeems your past. Too often, people feel disqualified from pursuing their purpose because of mistakes, failures, or regrets. They believe their past is too messy, their scars too deep, or their sins too great. But God's power doesn't just erase the stains of your past, it transforms them into a testimony. The very things you thought disqualified you can become the platform for your greatest impact. God has a way of taking what the enemy meant for harm and turning it into something good, something that not only heals you but also inspires and uplifts others. When you embrace God's power, you also gain the courage to walk in your purpose. Let's face it, pursuing your calling can be intimidating. There will be moments when the path ahead seems uncertain or when the obstacles appear too great. But God's power gives you the boldness to move forward, even in the face of fear. It reminds you that you are not walking this journey alone. He goes before you, preparing the way, and He walks beside you, giving you strength for every step. God's power aligns your heart with His will. Sometimes, discovering your purpose isn't about finding something new. It's about surrendering what you already have. When you align your desires, goals, and plans with God's, His power begins to flow more freely in your life. This alignment brings a sense of peace and fulfillment that nothing else can match. You realize that your purpose isn't just about you, it's about serving others and bringing glory to God. And here's the most beautiful part: living in God's purpose doesn't just transform your life, it transforms the lives of those around you. When you walk in your God-given purpose, you become a light in a dark world. You become a source of hope, inspiration, and encouragement to others who are searching for meaning. God's power working through you has a ripple effect, touching hearts and changing lives in ways you may never fully see or understand. So, no matter where you are right now, whether you feel lost, uncertain, or stuck, know this: God's power has a plan for you. It's a plan to prosper you, to give you hope, and to provide a future that is more fulfilling than anything you could imagine. His power will guide you, strengthen you, and transform you, setting you on a path toward the purpose He has created you to fulfill. All you have to do is trust Him and step forward in faith. Inner strength and resilience are essential to navigating life's trials and uncertainties. But let's be honest, there are moments when your own strength feels insufficient. Life has a way of throwing storms at you, storms that threaten to knock you off course, and storms that seem impossible to endure. In those moments when your strength feels depleted and your hope is hanging by a thread, God's power steps in. It doesn't just give you a temporary boost, it builds within you a deep, abiding strength and resilience that can only come from Him. This is the kind of strength that sustains you, not just through the occasional rough patch, but through the most challenging seasons of your life. God's power doesn't simply make life easier, it makes you stronger. It's important to understand that resilience isn't about avoiding difficulties, it's about being able to face them and come out stronger. God's power equips you to endure, to persevere, and to rise above circumstances that might otherwise overwhelm you. It's like an anchor in the storm, holding you steady even when the winds are raging and the waves are crashing around you. With God's power, you don't just survive the storm, you emerge from it transformed, with a strength you didn't know you possessed. One of the ways God's power builds inner strength is by giving you peace that surpasses all understanding. This isn't a fleeting or superficial peace. It's a deep soul-level calm that remains even in the midst of chaos. It's the kind of peace that doesn't depend on your circumstances, but comes from knowing that God is in control. When you lean into His power, you begin to realize that you don't have to have all the answers or fix every problem on your own. His peace fills the gaps, quiets the doubts, and gives you the confidence to face whatever comes your way. Another way God's power strengthens you is by reminding you of who you are in Him. The world often tries to define us by our failures, limitations, or the opinions of others. It tells us we're not enough, that we're too weak, too broken, or too flawed. But God's power redefines your identity. It declares that you are His child, loved, chosen, and capable of far more than you can imagine. When you begin to see yourself through His eyes, you gain a strength that no external force can shake. You realize that your worth isn't based on what you've done or what you've been through, but on who God says you are. God's power also teaches you to rely on Him, not on yourself. Society often glorifies self-reliance, telling us that we have to be strong on our own and that needing help is a sign of weakness. But the truth is, true strength comes from recognizing your need for God and surrendering to His power. It's in those moments of surrender, when you admit that you can't do it on your own, that His strength is made perfect in your weakness. This doesn't mean you stop trying or give up. It means you stop carrying burdens that were never meant for you to bear alone. Resilience built on God's power is different from the resilience the world offers. It's not about sheer determination or grit, though those can play a part. It's about being rooted in a source of strength that never runs dry. Life will try to shake you, but when you are anchored in God's power, you remain unshaken. His strength enables you to bend without breaking, to fall and get back up, and to keep moving forward even when the path is unclear. God's power also uses trials to shape and strengthen you. Like a piece of iron being forged in fire, your character, patience, and faith are refined through the challenges you face. These moments are not wasted, they are opportunities for growth. Each obstacle you overcome with God's help builds a deeper resilience and a stronger faith. Over time, you begin to see that the things meant to break you have actually made you stronger. This strength and resilience extend beyond you, they impact those around you. When others see how God's power sustains you, they are inspired to seek that same power for themselves. Your perseverance becomes a testimony, a beacon of hope that reminds others that they too can endure. God's power working in you doesn't just strengthen you, it strengthens your community, your family, and your world. When life feels overwhelming, remember this: God's power is your refuge, your strength, and your ever-present help in trouble. You don't have to face life's challenges alone or rely solely on your own strength. His power is sufficient, His grace is abundant, and His strength will see you through. Trust in Him, and you will find a resilience that not only endures but thrives, no matter what life throws your way. One of the most extraordinary aspects of God's power is how it takes brokenness and transforms it into something beautiful. Life is filled with moments of failure, heartbreak, loss, and mistakes that leave us feeling shattered. We've all been there, carrying the weight of our past, the pain of our choices, or the scars of circumstances beyond our control. It can feel like the broken pieces of your life are too many, too scattered, or too damaged to ever come together again. But God's power doesn't just mend, it recreates, renews, and restores. It doesn't merely repair what's broken, it transforms it into something even greater. God's power operates in ways that defy human understanding. Where the world sees brokenness as the end, God sees it as the beginning. He specializes in taking what looks like ruin and turning it into a masterpiece. Imagine a potter working with clay that has been marred. Instead of discarding it, the potter reshapes it, molding it into a vessel of even greater purpose and beauty. That's what God does with our lives. His power works through the cracks, the wounds, and the shattered dreams to create something far beyond what we could imagine. God's ability to restore is rooted in His love and grace. He doesn't look at your brokenness with judgment or disdain, He looks at it with compassion. He knows every detail of your story, the mistakes you've made, the struggles you faced, the pain you've endured, and yet He chooses to work in and through you. His power is not limited by your failures or flaws. In fact, it is often in those moments of greatest weakness that His power shines the brightest. When God restores, it's not just a return to how things were. His restoration is always greater. Consider the story of Job, a man who lost everything: his wealth, his family, his health. It seemed as though his life had been completely destroyed. But when God stepped in, He didn't just restore Job's life, He blessed him with more than he had before. This is the nature of God's restoration. It doesn't simply put the pieces back together, it creates something new, something better, something that reflects His power and glory. God's power also transforms the way we view our brokenness. What once felt like shame or failure becomes a source of strength and testimony. The scars you carried become evidence of God's healing. The struggles you face become a story of resilience and redemption. And those stories aren't just for you, they're for others who are walking their own paths of brokenness. When people see how God has worked in your life, it inspires them to believe that He can do the same for them. Your brokenness, transformed by God's power, becomes a beacon of hope. This transformation requires trust and surrender. It's not easy to hand over your brokenness to God. There's a tendency to hold on to the pieces, to try to fix things on your own, or to hide your pain from others. But God's power is activated when you let go, when you place those pieces in His hands and trust Him to do what only He can do. It's in that moment of surrender that His power begins to work, weaving together the threads of your story into something beautiful. God's restoration also brings healing, not just physical healing, but emotional and spiritual healing as well. The wounds that once defined you begin to fade as His love and grace fill the spaces where pain once resided. He replaces bitterness with forgiveness, sorrow with joy, and despair with hope. His power works from the inside out, transforming your heart, mind, and spirit. It's a process, and it doesn't happen overnight. But with each step, you begin to see and feel the evidence of His restorative work. What's even more remarkable is that God uses our brokenness for His purpose. The very things we think disqualify us, the mistakes, the failures, the hardships, are often the things He uses to accomplish His plan. Think of Peter, who denied Jesus 3 times. Peter's failure could have defined him, but God's power transformed it. He restored Peter, and that same man went on to become a pillar of the early church. Your brokenness doesn't disqualify you, it equips you. Through God's power, it becomes the foundation for something greater than you could have imagined. So even when life feels shattered, when the pieces of your story seem too broken to ever come together, know this: God's power can and will restore you. He will take what was meant for harm and turn it into something good. He will take the ashes of your life and create beauty. And through it all, He will remind you that no matter how broken you feel, you are never beyond the reach of His love, grace, and transforming power. The power of God is not limited to transforming individuals. It has a profound ripple effect that reaches far beyond the person being changed. When God works in your life, that transformation becomes a testimony, an undeniable display of His power and grace that impacts everyone around you. It's like a spark igniting a flame, spreading hope, inspiration, and faith to others who are searching for meaning, healing, and direction. God's power in your life is not just for your benefit, it is a catalyst for change in your family, community, and even the world. When people witness the transformation in your life, it speaks louder than words ever could. A changed life is one of the most compelling pieces of evidence of God's power. It's one thing to hear about God's ability to redeem and restore, but it's another to see it in action. Whether it's overcoming addiction, finding peace in the midst of chaos, healing from deep wounds, or walking in newfound purpose, your transformation becomes a living example of what God can do. It tells others that if He can do it for you, He can do it for them too. Your testimony has a way of breaking down barriers and reaching people in ways that nothing else can. There are those who may never open a Bible or step into a church, but they will see the changes in your life. They'll notice the peace you carry, the joy that radiates from you, the resilience you exhibit in the face of adversity. These qualities are not easily ignored. They raise questions, stir curiosity, and open the door for conversations about where that transformation comes from. In those moments, God uses your story as a bridge to connect with others. The ripple effect of God's power extends to your relationships. As you are transformed, your interactions with others begin to change. Maybe you were once quick to anger, but now you respond with patience and understanding. Perhaps you struggled with selfishness, but now you live with generosity and compassion. These changes don't go unnoticed by the people closest to you, your family, friends, co-workers, and even strangers. They begin to see God's love and character reflected in you, and that reflection can plant seeds of faith in their hearts. One of the most beautiful aspects of this ripple effect is how it inspires hope in those who feel stuck or hopeless. Many people believe their circumstances are beyond redemption, or that they are too broken for change. But when they see what God has done in your life, it challenges that belief. It shows them that transformation is possible, no matter how dire their situation may seem. Your testimony becomes a source of encouragement, reminding them that God's power is limitless and available to anyone who seeks it. God's power working through you can also create opportunities for ministry and service. As you share your story and live out your faith, others may feel drawn to you for guidance, support, or prayer. You may find yourself in positions to mentor, encourage, or simply walk alongside others as they navigate their own journeys. In this way, your transformation not only impacts others, but also multiplies, as those you influence go on to share their experiences with still more people. This is how God's kingdom grows one life at a time, each one touching another. It's important to remember that the ripple effect isn't about perfection. You don't have to have everything figured out or be free from struggles for God to use you. In fact, it's often in your imperfections and ongoing growth that others see the authenticity of God's work. They see that transformation is a process, one that requires reliance on God every step of the way. This honesty and vulnerability make your story relatable and approachable, inviting others to embark on their own journey of faith. God's power in your life can also inspire collective change. When enough individuals are transformed, communities begin to shift. Families are healed, workplaces become more positive, and neighborhoods experience greater unity. The ripple effect can even extend to societal levels, as people inspired by God's power and others begin to advocate for justice, compassion, and love in tangible ways. It all starts with one person, one heart surrendered to God's power, but the impact can be far-reaching. Through it all, God is glorified. Every life touched, every heart changed, every relationship restored points back to Him. The ripple effect is not about drawing attention to ourselves, but about showcasing the incredible power and love of God. As He works through you, He not only transforms your life, but also uses you as a vessel to bring light, hope, and renewal to a world in desperate need. In the end, the power of God is not just an abstract concept, it is real, tangible, and available to all who seek it. It transforms broken lives into beautiful testimonies, instills purpose and direction, builds resilience and strength, and ripples outward to impact the world in ways we could never imagine. It's the force that turns failures into victories, scars into stories, and darkness into light. No matter where you are, no matter what you've done, God's power is ready to work in you, through you, and for you. All you need is faith to believe, courage to surrender, and a heart open to His love. With His power, there is nothing that cannot be overcome, no life that cannot be renewed, and no purpose that cannot be fulfilled. Trust in Him, step forward, and watch how His transforming power changes not only your life, but the lives of all those you touch. Thank you.